If you look at it internationally, 1923 was a great year. It saw the invention of the television camera, the automatic traffic light, the Polaroid camera, and those with a sweet tooth welcomed the Milky Way bar. However, locally, 1923 saw a high infant mortality rate, a rising cost of living, and the rise of advocates for social change like Clennell Wickham and the Right Excellent Charles Duncan O'Neill. And in the northernmost parish, in the community of Greenwiches, a son was born to Egbert and Muriel Bannister. His name, Lawrence, better known as Lance. This son would go on to shine in the fields of medicine, local literature, and sculpture.
I lived on a plantation, and the owner was white, and the laborers were black, what we call colored, and the only colored person apart from them was a sanitary inspector. My mother never seemed to call us, the family, colored. I don't know, we were exempt from that. Because color was associated with labor, work. And my father was a bookkeeper, and so on. Now, and while their children were called Master this and Master that, I was called Master Lance.
The term black was not used for people like us in those days. Up to the time when I went to school, to secondary school, law school, and finished in '67, if you called someone black, that was an insult, right? You were colored. He was a colored gentleman. Colored meant you were like from David Thompson's complexion down to Dr. Bannister's complexion. And you did not speak of these sharp and angular distinctions, black or white, right? Nowadays we acknowledge, we accept the American color coding. If you're not black, you're white. So Samuel Jackman Prescott becomes a black man, which he's not. He's not, he's mixed, of mixed ancestry.
Having seen his poem, Identity Crisis, I wondered if this was the origin. When I was young and white, or so I thought, I often tried to write a knot in my hair that trespassed on the boundary of my face, sculpted and refined a nose by no means aquiline at others' importunate prayer, to resemble the fortunate and the fair. Came the rude awakening I was colored, from rank and power and privilege disenfranchised, by a lick of the tar brush. Then was I 24 karat black, and could I trace beyond the Middle Passage a heritage back to roots of Rastafari, David's line? Wrong again. The black escutcheon was blotted white, the coffee watered down with milk, the proud authentic flair of Africa's nose eroded by pale Caucasian genes. Then who or what was I? A question all might ask, for what black skin the ebony Ethiop wears contains no vestige layer of white. What true blue European blood closets no black skeleton? But what before seemed loss, now I deemed great gain. For this budding wordsmith, he's joined on his journey by well-known teacher and disciplinarian Wilkie Cumberbatch.
It was through him that I was able to get the primary to first grade scholarship to go to Harrison College, because my father couldn't afford to send me. The white people could afford to send their children. But I got that, and I also got $24 a term to buy books from Boyne and Sons, not there anymore. But Wilkie Cumberbatch, he was the expert on getting, he could take a crapo and make him get in, you know? He was the expert. But of course, I mean, the scars on my back are there to prove it. He spared not the rod, nor spoiled the child.
You had to learn.
You had to learn, yeah. But looking back on it, I still think that if the motivation could have been improved, I would have done just as well. Yes. But those masters, there's no question of motivation. The motivation was the the strap. That was the motivation.
Motivation which will see him enter the hallowed halls of Harrison College when we come back.
When you went to the farm first, all the other chaps in it had already done some Latin. I had never done that. When it came to English, grammar, and parsing and analysis, I was a master, far ahead of them. But when it came to the other, I then had to start Latin, and these chaps knew the amor, a math already. So I then had to learn it. And then the problem was that, whereas in preparation, I had been well written, well coached, you know. Here now, I was on my own. Sink or swim, you know, sink or, you know, that was the main difference. Made some friendships, yeah. Got a picture of the chaps who were in the sixth form with me. Rochford, he's dead now. A lot of them are dead, huh? Ford, A.N. Ford, he was a minister in the thing. Chap called Shepherd. But then, of course, after that, I couldn't have, we parted ways, so.
And then it was on to Codrington College, a feat achieved through the industriousness of his father. It was here that Lance would shine in the classics he loved.
One became aware of Lance Bannister when one heard about the iron sculpture. But I knew of Lance Bannister from the time I went into work at Inland Revenue, that's in '67, and he was the police doctor. Police, if not at that time, soon thereafter. So you knew that there was a Dr. L.B. Bannister in Perry Gap on Robert Street. And, you know, my connection with the police is fuzzy, but I knew that police cases, medical cases were referred to Dr. Lance Bannister. But then, as I said, I met him, I knew about the iron sculpture. I think when he produced his first iron sculpture, I got to know him. And I can't even remember how we met, but I know that we connected through our common interest in Barbadian folklore. As you know, Peggy McGarry, Grace Thompson, and myself had done a book on Barbadian folk songs. And he wanted to do a follow-up book, which he did, Moonlight Songs of Barbados. And it is there we really connected. I knew of him when I looked at the Mona campus yearbooks, and there is an iconic picture of the first 33 medical students. First 33 University of the West Indies students, all medical students, about 18 of whom were Jamaican, and the other 15 had traveled from Guyana, Trinidad, Barbados, and he was one. And there's that picture of him, sitting, crouching or kneeling, and the irrepressible Bannister smile.
From the time I was 3 years old, my father said I was going to be a doctor.
Yeah, okay.
And not only did he say it, but I said it too. I just repeated what he said, because that was the only thing to be. A doctor, a lawyer. We had no candlestick makers, unfortunately. Yeah. That was all that there was. Or maybe a teacher, and so on. Or he worked in the land, yeah. So we chose to do medicine. Well, eventually I did a diploma in child health. I went back to Coventry and did a diploma in child health with a degree, the diploma from Glasgow. Yeah. But I practiced general medicine.
A general practitioner who never forgot his love of the classics.
Well, starting from Homer, Virgil, Horace, Catullus, whom I have translated. I've translated all of Catullus' works, and that's a book that we've got, hopefully to come out at some time. So those are the classical ones, yes. But then after that, of course, you got Wordsworth. Nowadays, if you say Wordsworth, people look down on you, you know.
William Wordsworth.
William Wordsworth.
Yes.
Yeah, Longfellow and
I love Longfellow.
Tennyson and Byron. Yes, yeah, the influence. When you say it started, actually, I did write a poem in the Harrisonian, which the GG, Sir Clifford Husbands, showed me a copy of it, in which I described this lady who played the violin. That's my wife. Yeah. Really? So I wrote a poem in the Harrisonian at Harrison College. Well, I mean, the desire to write something that, you know, made sense and that people would understand, that was beautiful, that was a joy forever, sort of thing. I wrote one on philosophy, which would, of course, be based on the study of philosophy, which was part of my classical degree. Because there has no cause. In other words, the beginning of the world. Because that has no cause.
I think he's a genuine person, and he has a wealth of experience. He's sort of a polymath, a genius. He has so many sides to him. And he brings a lot of different dimensions to the writing experience.
I first became aware of Dr. Bannister. It was in the early thousands, 2000 and probably 2006, I think. And he came to one of our Writers' Clinics. And the Writers' Clinic is a National Cultural Foundation program where we offer instruction, critique, advice to writers. I'm going to engage in a little shameless self-promotion here. So, but it's a wonderful program. It's been running for quite a few years now. And Dr. Bannister came along seeking advice on his writing. It was clear from the very first time he came that he was talented, that his talent in life wasn't just restricted to the medical field. And the wonderful thing about him, and this is one of the things that stood out for me, was that he was very open to critique. Would not be offended when you said, oh no, I don't like that. I mean, we offer sound critique. We don't like it because, or we don't think it works because. And he was always very open. And Dr. Bannister would come back month after month, because it was a monthly program, with the same poem, but with all of these revisions. And the poem that eventually won him the top award at NIFCA, the Gold Award, was one of those poems that he had workshopped with us at Writers' Clinic.
My love and I elope to land of sweet imagining, where dreams have no beginning and no end. As arm in arm we stroll down linger lanes, crisscrossed by trails plain smooth by lovers bent on fond pursuit of self-same grail. And light on Graham Hall Lake, who makes up pristine face, where lucid water flows, paints pouting lips, full-blown summer rose, whose craggy brows comb cloudy skies, pencil shadows round limpid fishpool eyes. We lure night's scratchy wisp, half door, close mahogany branch jealousies, hang moon's kerosene lamp from sooty ceiling, hold hands where green lizard creeps, flaunting yellow wattle, in lecherous anticipation of clandestine assignation.
His ability to capture intimate portraits of Barbadian types, the Barbadian of 50 years ago, his pen portraits of them, because I think what he does is excellent pen portraiture. I mean, talks about his aunt, who when she got dressed wore 14 items of clothing. A well-dressed woman in her day, all right? And he creates pictures in your mind which remain with you long after you've finished talking to him or read, right? And you said, that is what Barbados was like long ago. And you see, he has no access to grind. He writes, he tells, like Oliver Cromwell would say, he tells a plain tale plainly. You cannot pin him down or buttonhole, or you cannot pigeonhole him. He's not an angry black radical as people in my generation would be.
I think that in every teacher there's a student. There has to be. And I think that although Dr. Bannister would be more than capable of teaching, I think that at that stage of his life he'd retired from medicine. And of course he's clearly a creative person. If you go to his home and you see the ironworks, the iron garden. I mean, that's actually when I first became a fan of Dr. Bannister. And when he first came to the class, I was actually really, honored actually that he was there. I'm very surprised because I didn't really know him as a writer. But I think that what happens is that he has allowed the student to step forward and take the fore in this case. And as I say, in that sense, he was a wonderful student coming back, as I said, month after month, demonstrating that he understood without necessarily being told what rating is. Because the hardest part of rating is the revision. It's easy to get it down. Anyone can write it down, not necessarily well, but they can write it down. But it's in the revision that you fine tune and that you create the gems that you then present to the public. And that's one thing he's shown, that he's very adept at doing. Bear in mind, of course, that, and this we learned, what I'm about to tell you, we learned as we got to know him, as he came back month after month. And I say we because it was the whole session, the whole class that learned these things. And he's been employing his experiences as a classics student, a student of classics. And that is what has very much informed his current writing. And because of that, he's produced some wonderful pieces. And not just wonderful because of their literary merit or because of how nice they sound, but because of how he explores and, I would say, exposes to a certain extent Bajan culture. Not just the physical, attributes that Barbados possesses, but he actually talks about, the things we eat, the things we say. He has a wonderful collection of poems. I don't know if he's ever going to publish them. I really hope he does. But they're rather risque. They're based on the poems of Catullus. And Catullus was, I don't want to go and, give wrong information here. A poet, I think, in Roman times. The original poems are written in Latin, and so Dr. Bannister understands them because he's fluent in that. And what he's done is he's not only translated them into English, he's translated them into Bajan. So what you have are these characters who are eating flying fish and drinking Maui. And it's really actually quite comical. But it's also important. It's important for us to see ourselves, in this classical framework. And I think that if that work were to be published, it would really add to the Barbadian literary canon. I believe that very strongly.
Lance would have an idea, and he will get together his truck man, and they will go to sometimes I would accompany them, to Welshman Hall Gully, and he would look for these choice gems, tidbits of metal, and they would slowly form by themselves the subject. And then he would ask me, Lance would call me and say, Rick, I want you to come and look at something. And I will go down to his gardens and give him, well, I like surreal art, but he's standard. So he would ask me, what do you think we should do here? What we should do here? And so, and I will try to give him a deeper dimension of the subject, rather than to make it so platitudinous. You know, if you're going to make it a piece of art, aesthetics, functionality is one thing, but aesthetics, people must appreciate it as a piece of art, just not a piece of metal. So it's the midwife crude pieces of metal into a subject is an enjoyable process to see people, to see it move from a universal joint or a drag shaft and form a piece, an artistic piece. And the patience, the investment of time and resources, it's a labor of love.
I had always felt that when I died, I wanted to leave something for the world to remember, and not only children. So that was my reason for the sculpture. And having studied medicine, it gave me anatomy. So the knowledge of anatomy allowed me to build people, animals, because comparative analogy is, I mean, the horse and so on is very much like the human being, has 2 eyes and 2 ears and so on. So when I got back to Barbados, 1955 or thereabouts, I met a man called F.H. Boyne, and he had broken down cars into parts, and he would sell them as their part. He was a wrecker. He was a wrecker. And he put them up and he called them his old car museum. So I looked at the parts and I said to myself, I could take this head, you know, and put it with this foot and so on and so on. So that was the origin of it.
He's an intellectual. His mind is broad. He encompasses classics, maths, physics. After all, his sculpture indicates that. He can talk about astrophysics. He can talk about radios. He can talk about, and he's the most amazing person I've come across, except my own father-in-law, Tony Hines, who had been born about 5 years earlier than he. And these are, and most of all, I must not let this, a gentleman.
By given the evidence of the quality of his work, he would be very highly placed. There's no doubt about that. But to me, I say but. That's a hard question to answer because there are so many different facets of the literary arts. And there would be so many, I think, different criteria by which we can judge that. So if we're looking at quality, then definitely high up. And that's evidenced by the fact that he won that top award relatively early in his writing career. Don't let the fact that he's, you know, at the time he was 80 plus, fool you. He had not been long to the writing world.
I think he's a person way ahead of his time. And he would like to see things happen, but perhaps this is not the right time, the right century for these things to happen.
When you're retired and you stay in bed and have your breakfast sent up, that's a recipe for dotage. In other words, you use it or you lose it.
Congratulations to Dr. L.B. Bannister on his many awards, embodying the theme and heart of NIFCA, that of excellence. Excellence, which is described by Brian Tracy, the motivational speaker, as not a destination, but a continuous journey that never ends.